If you're looking to waterproof your wall to prevent damp getting in, to get rid of that salt efflorescence that you can get on the bricks, and generally make your house more thermally efficient in preparation for the winter, then today's video is for you. I'm not going to be using one of those sealing products that have been around for years, which I might have used in the past, as these can stop your walls from breathing and give you lots of problems down the line. I'm going to be using a hydrophobic product that's breathable but waterproof, reducing absorption into the walls by up to 96%, which is pretty handy when you've got incredibly porous bricks, like the ones I'm going to show you today. Now, today's product is Emperor Creme, and I should stress at this point that I haven't been paid anything by Emperor to mention them in today's video. But they hit my radar a year ago when I had to tackle the outside of the property, which was in a terrible mess. I've got to be honest with you, I only bothered to paint one coat of their masonry paint on the Tyrolean rendered walls, just to get that video out. But even with the job only half done like this breathable, self-cleaning, waterproof paint I think looks as good today as the day that I applied it, even with all the recent building works. And at the time I was also aware that they did a cream. Now, my Tyrolean isn't breathable. It was slapped on in the 70s, and for a long time now I've been thinking about knocking off these concrete plinths that took the render right down to the ground, so that the walls could finally breathe, at least at some point near the bottom. These concrete plinths are a nightmare because typically they bridge the damp-proof course, and also, as you can see here where I've peeled some of them away, you get soil, weeds, bugs, everything else inundating the brickwork behind the plinth, which creates a real breathing ground for moisture and damp and penetrating into those walls. So that's what I was going to do, but during the building works this problem became even more pressing because the house was literally sitting on soil. In a lot of areas there wasn't any foundation, so we had to underpin it. And what we used to underpin it was bricks that reclaimed from internal walls that we'd knocked down. And some of these bricks really shouldn't have been used on the outside walls, whereas I've got some quite good blue engineering bricks like you see here. Other bricks were super porous, and this made the weatherproofing, waterproofing issue even more pressing, particularly given that we patioed right up to the house. Now, I talked about why I did that in last week's video, but basically I couldn't guarantee drainage in a French drain type system. If you're going to put gravel in a channel next to the house, you've got to have a means for the water that goes into that gravel to drain away, and we couldn't do that. There's more on that in last week's video. And in case you're wondering why I've got this slightly bizarre, messy brickwork here, a lot of the house was actually sitting on some old stone foundations, I think probably from a previous cottage, and a lot of the rest of it was just sat on soil. So we've underpinned and tidied up as much of it as we can at this point, but there is inevitably quite a lot of it which is in a bit of a state, and at some point is going to have to be repointed or possibly replaced. I haven't really decided yet. But I wanted to weatherproof these bricks so that when it was raining like it is now, the rain didn't bounce up off the patio onto the bricks, sinking into the bricks, but also we've got the damp-proof course 150mm down, didn't want it getting above that either. So I was desperate to get them protected before the winter weather set in. But how do we waterproof bricks? When you think about waterproofing, you tend to think of those seals, Thompson's water seal, stuff like that, which I've been using for years. But a lot of these sealing products aren't highly breathable, which means they trap water inside the bricks, particularly when they start to fail. And when moisture gets trapped behind, it blows the seal on the front, causing that seal to fail pretty quickly. So whatever you use to waterproof your bricks must be breathable. And masonry creams are the best waterproofing treatment. Clear gel-like treatments, they chemically bond to the brick rather than creating a film on the surface. And what they do is penetrate into the surface, and in the case of the Emperor Creme, up to 18mm into that brick. And what that does is it's chemically bonding the mineral groups within the brick, so that effectively the brick becomes the waterproofing agent, not a seal on the surface. And the best thing about this is it doesn't impact breathability, it doesn't change the appearance of the brick, and it doesn't compromise that masonry. So that's the lesson over. Let's have a look at how I got on with the Emperor Creme. The first thing you have to do, which is pretty self-explanatory, is wash the walls to make sure there isn't any dirt that you're going to be, I suppose, painting the cream over. Now, we used to have a flower bed right up to the house, and a lot of soil was still trapped between the bricks. So yeah, it wasn't pretty when I got the pressure washer out around this side of the house. And I have got a lot of repointing to do. The next step is to remove any organic growth. And to do that, I got myself a tub of this. I mean, cleaning again is obvious, but in my case there was a lot of fungal growth on the bricks, as you can see here. So I applied some Emperor Masonry Cleaner, which has a fungicide that kills the fungus, ensuring it can't bloom once you've treated the bricks. You allow this to dry for 2 to 3 hours at 20 degrees, and then once dry, wash off to remove any residue. Now the next step before you apply the cream is to repair any failed pointing between the bricks. Now I had a little bit more to do than that, because when my builders created this new doorway, we had a couple of missing bricks. When I tried to remove this growth from the bricks, slightly worryingly, some of the mortar actually washed out of the joints. Maybe the wrong mix was used there. So I set about cutting some of the, again, reclaimed bricks we had, which were a little bit too wide for this space. I cut them down to size. And then I applied a 4-to-1 mix of sand and cement with a bit of waterproofing plasticizer. You'll have noticed the mortar I repointed with is a slightly different colour to the original. The original was a red sand that came in 1-ton sacks, and the individual bags I'm now buying come from a different quarry. I've got so many jobs to do right now, though matching the mortar was the least of my worries. And another pressing job was repointing the gap below the newly installed bifolds, which was a bit of a contortion exercise involving me lying on the floor so I could see what I was doing. And then I could finally start thinking about applying the cream. So here it is. Hope you can see this in the light, because filming white is never the easiest thing to do. I decided to experiment with both a mini roller and paintbrush, the idea being to use the paintbrush in the difficult to reach areas under the Tyrolean and down by the sandstone slabs, which I didn't want the cream to leach into, and tell you to lay the product onto the surface of the masonry so only a small amount of the brickwork can be seen through the coating. This was a bit hard to do when you're not used to applying paint and stuff so thick and have no previous experience of how it's going to sink in. And if I'm honest, I didn't apply the cream thick enough when you compare what I was doing here with the marketing shots on the Emperor website. This was partly down to my choice of roller, and so I advise you to go with the roughest pile roller sleeve you can find so you can lay on the cream as thick as possible. It sank in without leaving a trace, and after heavy rain the bricks quickly dried out where previously they would have stayed damp for days. However, when I gave the bricks a quick spray to see how they'd perform, there was no obvious beadings, although an hour later it was pretty much completely dry. So I got on the phone to Emperor and they told me I could apply a second coat without affecting the performance or breathability of the cream. So I set about doing this, and probably this time applied it as thick as I should have done first time round, which was slightly against their instructions of not laying on the second coat too thick. However, I was concerned at just how porous those bricks were and wanted to make them as weatherproof as possible. Careful treating anything you're going to render, as I suspect I'm going to have a few problems getting the render to bond to this. I also used a roller sleeve designed for much rougher surfaces. In short, this is the sort of thickness you want to be aiming for. And a few hours later, once again, you can't really tell the bricks have been treated. And what about beading this time, which can take up to 24 hours to be visible? Well, I think you'll agree that's much better. But how did I forget to fill that drill hole? So that's it for today. I hope you found that useful. What to tell you? Well, I suppose if I'm honest, there was a little bit of leaching into my Raj Green sandstone paving slabs where, if I'm completely honest, I did put a bit of the cream onto that dreadful resin that I used, which I featured in last week's video. Try and make it less porous at this point against the house. So just something to be aware of to keep the cream off yours. It is gradually disappearing on every downpour we have. But I just thought I'd mention it, and the eagle-eyed amongst you out there will probably point it out anyway. I'll put a link to the product and anything else I've used in the description below the video, as I always do. And I hope you stay tuned for more content. I've got so much. Hello, DIY dog. I've got so much to do at the moment. I've got the roof to put on whilst we've got some decent weather. I've got a front door to paint, which I'm going to be using a different paint system on because I basically hate painting. I've got underfloor heating, slabs to prepare, gutters to finish painting, fascias to treat, and a bike to convert to electric so I can keep up with my son on his DV. So if you haven't already, it'd be great to have you subscribe. You can do that obviously by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified every time I upload a video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.